Tesla Germany halted by environmentalists concerned about trees, water, and animals. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Wanted to say a special thank you to our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So an interesting, well, we have a couple of housekeeping items before we get on to our show today as usual. The first is the fact that we have about maybe a quarter or less of the people that are watching our channel that are sort of getting into trading, and some of you making huge sums trading some of the conversations we've had over the last month and a half or two. And I first want to say congratulations. The thing I wanted to point out to you is that we're starting to get a situation where we have folks sort of firing trades at us that they're considering or doing, et cetera. And you'll notice that when you do that, I usually do not respond directly. And I invite you to email us on admin@teslafaninsight.com. Now, what I wanted to further highlight as we see more people sort of doing this is that I have people sending me very, very complex trade ideas. And my response to that is that the reason why I both understand and can deal with those trades is that I have a lot of experience doing it. And the couple of $100, and every trade answer we provide, we deduct it from your trading budget. And so we're doing it in that fashion because it literally takes time and energy to figure out the trade that you're proposing and how it fits the data that we're providing, and to provide an answer and for it to be good and professional, it requires both thought, focus, and research to answer. So no, we won't be answering any sort of fire a trade you're doing at us stuff randomly online. It's probably illegal as well, but in the private setting, I believe that we can get it done, and I think we add a lot of value in that regard because we already added on general statements. The other thing we wanted to point out is that we're actually working on an idea that we want to get your feedback on, and that is that I had a conversation with a viewer on Friday who's actually made a lot of money trading Tesla with our assistance in terms of perspective. And what he indicated was he was looking forward to my presentation on Friday based on what my expectations were of what would happen during the trade day. So I kind of bring this up because what we're looking at doing is something like a 5-day-a-week before the markets open, 5 to 10 minutes of just what does a trading environment look like and what might it look like as a day to trade in general. And that way, for those of you who are doing trading on your own and by yourself in a silo, you have an opportunity to perhaps get another perspective that's not yours on what's going on that you might want to use in the process of evaluating how and what you're going to do when it comes to your trade. You know, the question is, what is it going to cost? The thought is that, you know, something like, you know, do it on Patreon, and there'll be a group of subscribers, and perhaps it's, you know, $5 a day through the week in order to have access to sort of the trade briefing for the morning. And so the goal is to keep it less than 10 minutes, more than 5. If there's a lot of news driving sort of more analysis, that's fine. But what's nice is it takes it away from interrupting the presentation on other issues, because probably 60% of our viewers are long-term holders and have zero interest in sort of short-term what's happening in the trading environment. But those that are interested have a lot of money at stake and are making a lot of money, so therefore they have an interest. So our response to this is that if you're already a Patreon supporter, send us a note, see what you think about this. If you're not a Patreon supporter, you can send us a note at admin@teslafaninsight.com, and we can use that as a way to sort of figure out whether or not sort of a daily trade briefing is something that's worth our time as well as yours. And so without further ado, I'd like to get into our show for today. So the first thing is that some news emerged that in Berlin, there is a group of environmentalists who have alluded to the fact that Tesla would impact their water, the trees that are being cut down are impactful, et cetera, and therefore do not want the factory to move forward without some delay. We don't know how long that's delay going to be. I'm actually kind of confused a lot of ways by this story, hence why we didn't do anything on it earlier, for a bunch of reasons. The first confusion is, why would you wait until 3 days before they're finished cutting all the trees before you get an injunction to stop cutting trees? So in theory, if there are only 3 days of cutting left and they've been cutting for a month and a half, they could just put a rope around the trees that haven't been cut and then continue to build the rest of the factory unencumbered by that tree delay. So that's sort of a surprise on my part. It's like, why are you guys doing this now? The next thing that popped up is the fact that there's this, what we call, there's a famous line in history that says, you never want to fight a war on multiple fronts. That was articulated by Napoleon. And so in this case, you have a very strange set of battle entities facing off with Tesla, or on the other side of Tesla, or in any rate in one of those directions. The first one is the fact that obviously the environmentalists are slowing stuff down right now, and they're the start. The second combatant is the fact that where this is being built is in the former East Germany. And so part of the job of West Germany has been to figure out ways to increase the job count in East Germany so that those folks can earn a living and move forward. And the jobs related to Tesla were designed to get that rolling. Now, on the flip side of this, I would not be surprised if 50% of the economic activity in Germany relies on the auto industry, because we've discussed this in the past of something called the 7-to-1 auto rule, where for every job in the auto industry, there are 7 sort of ancillary jobs that are out there that impact, that part of the country or world. And so we basically have a critical industry in the auto firms, and there's a good reason why one would think Germany would want to protect that industry by limiting outsiders like Tesla expanding there. The reality is kind of the opposite. The German government is one of the most focused in the EU on reducing the carbon footprint / use of ICE, vehicles, et cetera. And so to that end, the German government is one of the big supporters of huge fines that will start to be levied next year against companies that are not meeting certain goals in terms of EVs. And so this is, a very interesting circumstance, given that on one hand, the government relies on ICE engine-based companies to pay a lot of money that supports the country, but on the other hand, they're trying to promote entities like Tesla that potentially wipe out the jobs of the very people who are paying their bills. So, one can figure out the logic, but very, very strange. On the other hand, clearly there's a need to reduce emissions. And so there are all these conflicting, both combatants and processes. Tesla's entry into the scene has actually been kind of fascinating because in the case of BMW / Mercedes, they've actually been doing this routine where they basically have stated, and we've watched several videos where they indicated that the politicians are well-meaning in their goals of EV emissions, but the problem that pops up is that it's unrealistic to be able to build vehicles that fit the parameters that the consumers want, that are viable, and that fit the needs of what the governmental agencies want to see. So one of the byproducts of all this is that, for example, when it comes to trucks and range, et cetera, the EU / Germany is actually using the Tesla Semi as a guide to, sort of structure a vehicle and goals that domestic manufacturers should have. So, Tesla is sort of operating in the space in a large way, even though they're not even there with the vehicle yet. I don't know if the German government members have flown to California to get a ride in the semi truck, but it's amazing to see them use the parameters, on that truck as their guide. Um, so, we're looking at three combatants here. One, obviously the auto industry and those that are employed by it. Two, the German government / EU and their process to reduce emissions. And to that end, it's our belief that other than the $45 million to pay for the land, Tesla doesn't have to pay for the factory in a similar manner to how the Chinese have sort of worked the banking system to create this. The third thing those are a couple of pointers. Another is the number of factories that have already been shut down in Germany that could already be used, where you retrofit and now you have a working plant or factory without having to do all the environmental damage that's going on. But I guess the argument there would be location of the jobs is a big deal. So in a lot of ways, Tesla's kind of playing a spoiler here because it's possible that Mercedes and others would have gotten changes to laws had they not been so successful with the vehicles that they're delivering, including having certain senior ministers in the government, sort of weigh in on this. The other thing that sort of the general final note here is, how is the stoppage going to affect Tesla? And the answer is, if it's a short-term stoppage, not a lot, based on the fact that they're sort of on schedule at this point. The question is, what if that stoppage is long-term? And the initial reaction is, well, it shouldn't be that big a deal because the numbers are not impacted earnings immediately. But when it comes to large institutions, the anticipation of some production from that factory mid-2021 is part of the calculation of what's going on with the stock price. So it's entirely possible if this drags on for more than a month or two, it'll start affecting the start date of manufacturing for next year for Tesla. And so therefore, there's a problem that pops up here that starts to become larger. The nice thing is that Tesla has a lot of options. They could just build more cars in another factory in China and just ship those to Europe as a backup plan. There's a lot of different ways they can solve this increased production need, regardless of how things work out in Germany. But I really think that this highlights some of the issues that we pointed out with them trying to actually go and build there. So in general, I'd have to say that it's unfortunate that the environmental folks have slowed, if not stopped, what's going on in the new Gigafactory. I guess would be Gigafactory 4 by Tesla. But I don't think it was unexpected. I think it makes sense. And I definitely would not be surprised, based on how things are done in the United States when it comes to lobbying, if in fact a couple of the large domestic manufacturers didn't find a few vociferous supporters of greenery, et cetera, and pay them to actually be a disruption to Tesla's process. So did this happen? We don't know. Is it possible? Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that's been going on for Tesla in a battle is that there's been a discussion of the fact, both in the United States and in Europe, of the fact that Tesla represents sort of tax breaks for the rich, because most of the people that are buying those cars are fairly wealthy. And so Germany is engaged in a kind of, your vehicle has to be below a certain price in order to qualify for EV credits. And Elon has come up with techniques where he sort of lowers or eliminates the range of certain vehicles temporarily in order to get under the EV tax credit levels that the EU/Germany has developed. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game that's gone on here. And, I think it's interesting, fascinating to watch an entity, try to screw up Tesla's sales plans on one hand, but on the other hand, they sort of are swinging into action to help a new factory get created within Germany and in a location that didn't have a factory previously. So it's more challenging to get the project done versus just using a pre-existing facility that one could retrofit. So, what's our overall assessment of the thing is it'll get built. There's no doubt about it, but it could be delayed, and hopefully that delay is short. But if they've got good lawyers in Germany like they have in the United States, that delay could be a while. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how Elon reacts to a lengthy delay, because committing resources and time to a place where you're adding months, if not years, to the schedule of production would not be good news in terms of the growth process that the company has in mind. So we'll definitely keep you posted as we learn more, see more, etc. Our sort of shooting schedule, so our overall in Germany is, I think it'll get built, but obviously with some delays, and we look forward to keeping you abreast of what's going on with this. We wanted to note I'm California bound tomorrow, and look forward to shooting some great shows with some great scenery as we've done in the past while there. If there's one thing that we wanted to point out is if you live in California, in the Southern California area, we're going to be in the range of area between Redondo Beach and Cheesecake Factory in Marina del Rey. So on Saturday around 2 p.m. after the main lunch rush, we were planning on having a group of folks that are Tesla fans of the vehicles, etc., meet up for a meal. Probably it's going to be one of the Mexican restaurants, could be P.F. Chang's or Cheesecake Factory, but just a location with a number of tables off peak hours so that we don't jam them as they're trying to do large amounts of Saturday business. But wanted to get your feedback in for our Southern California friends on this idea, and we can give you more details if you send us notes. We could definitely give you more details and suggestions on locations might work. I think we're kind of spread between Orange County and the north side of Los Angeles, so someplace in West LA, Santa Monica, all the way down to the airport area probably makes sense because it would manage the drive time well for people from different directions. At any rate, look forward to updates from you in terms of what you think of the idea and if you'd be interested in joining us, and if so, where, and we can sort of work out that trip. The next thing that we wanted to review is our general health tips once again. Don't forget, no more than once a week for fried foods. Don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably. 4, to let the food completely digest. 5, or number 3 is, consider a 5-2 or other fasting diet for a portion of your meals. And number 6 is Mr. Petrobono's suggestion that some weightlifting added in a couple of times a week helps with bone density issues. So I think it's a legitimate argument to consider. And, as usual, try to maintain same bed and wake up times on a consistent basis, because I think you'll feel better in the process. Definitely comes from the sleep clinic, and it's called Circadian Rhythms, and you might want to read about it because I think it would make you a lot happier. At any rate, we're looking forward to any and all comments, and we're also looking forward to a new factory in Germany. And if it doesn't happen, clearly we have the Chinese alternative plan to help that work. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, German au revoir, French Leithroat, Hebrew Choda Hafez, Farsi, Hedge Do, Swedish, Srazvicher, Russian hello, Ni hao ma, Chinese hello, and we're praying for those folks regarding coronavirus for sure. Again, thanks for joining us. We look forward to our next contact. Have a great day, and bye for now.